All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the Wednesday, October 10th special full board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, everybody's checked in, Mike. Invocation by Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can bow our heads, please. Lord, thank you for the opportunity for us to serve the residents of Macomb County. Please guide us in our deliberations that we do right by the residents and not by any political affiliation that we may belong to. That every decision give us the intestinal fortitude to make right by the people that we represent throughout this entire county. In the Lord Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Item number 5, need a motion to adopt today's agenda. Motion by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Leonetti. Please vote. All right, motion passes. Item approval of minutes dated October 4th, 2018. Motion by Commissioner Drolet, supported by Commissioner Kleinfeld. Seeing no discussion, please vote. Motion passes. Item number 7, public participation. Seeing no one from the public, we're going to close public participation. Item number 8, no correspondence from the executive's office regarding today's meeting. Item number 9, budget reviews. Capital improvement plan, facilities and operations projects. Director Smigo and Lynn, how are you? Thank you for joining us today.
Yep.
Steve, you know, I've kind of explained it, but I know that we've talked about kind of separating out the capital projects from all the rest of the budget stuff. So I know you're going to give a little
Yeah, I just have some
preliminary to
introductory comments before Lynn goes on a project overview. So again, as you know, we've scheduled 2 such meetings of the full board to talk about capital projects. Today's meeting will concentrate on the facilities-related items in the various buildings around the county, and Lynn will go through project by project what those projects entail. And then on the 22nd, we have another meeting scheduled to discuss IT-related projects with JACO and various department heads. So just to give the board an update, I believe there are 10 departments with IT projects on the list for next year. I've got confirmations from 7 of those. Expect the other 3, hopefully tomorrow, to be here on the 22nd. So we should have departmental representation to make their case for their projects. I wanted to let the board know that. And as well, on the 22nd, I'll have the quarterly update on the 2018 capital plan and how that's going to affect the forecast for the remainder of 2018. I also indicated a week or 2 ago, maybe on more than one occasion, that I would be coming to the board in October with 2 things: a revenue adjustment for 2 or 3, 4 items, and about total of about $5 million of upward revenue adjustments in the general fund for items we've talked about: property taxes, personal property reimbursement, real estate transfer tax, interest, and there's another one I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, it's about $5 million of upward revenue adjustments, and also a forecast for the remainder of 2018 and see how that looks. So I don't have that forecast quite ready yet. I'm hoping to have it before next Wednesday's Finance Committee. If not, it'll be on the 22nd when we talk about the remainder of the capital projects. So then you'll be able to see how the 18 capital plan fits in with the forecast and kind of get a more broad picture of what things look like. So that's the extent of my comments. So.
Thanks. Any questions for Steve? All right, it's not working. Are you on there? Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, thank you for what you just said. You're going to come forward on the other departments when they come up. Can I ask, though, when they come up, the departments with him for the IT, can they be prepared to state the projects in a way that if it's an ongoing project, accumulative to date?
Yeah.
Meaning that 2013, I started a project. Overall, it's a $7 million cost to date. We anticipated $3 million more into that
Yeah, I'll
project.
follow up with Jaco.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So I
because
wanna know.
when I look at the list, then, some of them I may recognize as an ongoing. I know where you're going.
So I
But some
don't-
are new, so,
And I understand, I would like them to be prepared. If these are new starting projects,
right.
I needed that to be clarified. And if they're ongoing projects, how much to date, how much is left?
Right.
Is that fair? Mm-hmm. All
fair.
right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers on the list, but if, that's fine. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed on this list, the list of 1 through 31 repair and replacement projects, that these central campus renovations they all start with the year first on plan in anticipated cost. And I noticed that anticipated cost isn't the anticipated cost from 2013. That's the anticipated cost from today, correct?
Right, correct.
Okay. So, number 2 through 31, my question is, were any of those projects initially slated inside the central renovation project? Were they originally listed within that project?
I think Lynn might be I don't believe so, but, and let me back up just for a minute. Let me add a comment. So item number 31 is actually a project from emergency management. So Vicky is one of the 3 department heads I don't have confirmed for the 22nd, but, so my thought is either the 22nd, she can discuss it, or on the day she has her budget hearing, one of those 2 dates. That's the replacement of all the Motorola radios around the county.
Yes, but but that's not even part of the central campus, really.
No, I'm just backing up and saying, there's all these things on the list and Vicky's not here. I'm just explaining that Vicky will be here in 2 weeks to talk about that one project.
Okay, so with regard to the central renovation, so all of these things that you have for the administration building and the other buildings that are part of this central campus renovation, are any of these projects that were initially slated within that project?
I want to say no. Certainly, when I go through, I will definitely make sure if it jumps out at me. But certainly, the administration building, those items, no, were not a part of the
Okay,
downtown project.
and then, Steve, you may not know this offhand, but if you could get back with us if you don't, how many actual physical change orders have taken place with regard to that project?
Oh, I don't know that. off the top of
Okay,
my head.
and do you know if there are change orders ongoing?
Like currently in progress?
Are there change orders,
don't-
right, because we started talking
I don't
about the
know.
fact that no change orders had come to us, and we have definitely gone over the amount in which change orders should. Now, I
don't know.
understand that we don't do change orders at the level of, say, the carpenter, because we paid for a project up here. But when there's change orders with regard to the cost of the entire project, we realize they probably should have been coming to us. So I just want to make sure that we're not today, we're not still doing change orders on that project that aren't coming to us.
Yeah, I'll have to follow up and get back with you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And I believe they're doing a central campus update next Monday, at Monday's meeting. So they'll be doing that then. That might help a little bit too.
I would suspect that Mr. Dellin will be here at that point as
Okay.
well, I would think.
Right. Okay.
So,
So, Steve, I don't have any other speakers, but to Commissioner Carabelli's point, when the other, when they come in talking about their capital projects, I'd also like to hear, like Jaco told us at one point, how much of, any project's going to get done in 19 and how much of it they anticipate getting done in 2000. Like, if it's a multi-year project, I'm going to ask, so I'm just saying if you could forewarn them, how much of the project do you think will be done in, and I know they can't exactly say, but I mean, is it going to be 50% in 19 and 50% in 20, or is it going to be 30, 30, and 30 about, or is it all slated for being done in 1 year? So that'll be a question that, I would be asking if you could kind of relay that information to them, to Jaco
Okay.
especially. Thank you. That being said, I don't have anybody else on the list, so Lynn, welcome. Always
you.
Good to have you here.
I've never been the only item on the agenda, so this
Well,
will
you're
be
special.
interesting. Yes, after all these years. I'd like to start with item 2, in as much as you do get an update on the downtown project. Item 2 is for the administration building. We're talking about rebuilding 2 of the chillers. The building does have a total of 2 chillers. We want to replace 4 chilled water pumps. Each chiller contains 2 pumps, a primary and a secondary, and also replace 2 cooling tower pumps. This obviously is the original equipment. It's from about 1997. We have targeted it for 2021, and it would be approximately 24 years old. When I talk about a lot of these mechanical items, we try and get every bit of life out of the equipment. We don't create an automatic obsolescence point, so we evaluate it, but we do want to put it on the radar. And sometimes we will push these items back, sometimes we will bring them forward, depending on the testing and the inspections.
So Lynn, let me just say this. How about if each one that you go over, I'll just make sure that no one has any questions about that particular project before we move on, so we don't, get to the bottom and then ask about chillers here in 30 minutes. So if anyone has questions, give me the wave or put it on. And so I'm just individually to this, I would ask this though, my first question, then I'll take any comments that we have. That's looking at being done in 21, but it's looking to be put on the budget in 20. So I'm just curious as to the timing. Maybe I'm just missing something.
I'm not sure.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 20. I was looking at the wrong line. There you go. Thanks for that great answer. You're looking at the wrong line. Commissioner Majek.
Yeah, just a quick question, comment, and I don't want to get off topic. If I do, Mr. Chair, just call me out on that. I see the agenda here, capital improvement plan, and that's great. I'm just wondering where I'm coming from. I'm thinking, that we have a budget that is not balanced, $8 million in the hole. I believe it's next year and a couple years going forward. And I'm hoping that a goal of this board, by looking at this capital plan, one of the goals should be, to figure out where we can prioritize needs, wants and needs, and try to fill a budget deficit that we have. That's what I'm hoping that we can accomplish somewhat through this. I'm not a full-time person who works here in the county, Lynn. There's all these projects. I'm not one that I can say what's a need and what's a want. So I would hope that that's something you and Mr. Schmiegel and our board chair can think about, because that's what I'm thinking about as our budget comes up. And, I voted for balanced budgets for many years, and just recently now we're not balanced. We're in deficit, and that's a really serious concern for me. And it's serious because times are supposed to be good, property values are high, we're getting in a lot of revenue. If we're not able to save during the good times, what are we going to do when times get tough? So I just hope that that's the discussion, that's a goal that we can come up with through these capital plan budgets and discussions, right. Mr. Chair, okay?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rob, I'll tell you, Commissioner Majek, if you want to stop and talk with Jen afterwards too, we have been working on the matrix kind of want versus need, safety versus this. And I will say that, in Lynn's budget, a lot of these are really systems. They're not, it's a lot easier for us for her to come to us, say, this is it broke down, or it's lasted 20 years and all the other ones have lasted 15. We really need to, do something, as opposed to, I think IT is going to have a tougher time explaining, the wants versus the needs to us than Lynn would. But yes, we are talking about that, and I'm sure with Lynn too, we'll have this talk, and we're kind of having it now, that if it's something that we get to 2021 and we haven't had any problems, but we have other issues, there's only going to be so much money to spend. So every department head's going to have to know which is prioritized in that budget, because we can't just keep adding money to a capital projects budget that we don't have, and keep bringing our general fund down. So at some point, the talk has been having a set capital projects budget and then having everybody have to live within it, kind of like your home budget, right? I mean, it's the same thing. And then each department head is responsible for prioritizing in their own way. So we have been having this discussion. Jen and I and Crystal have been meeting with Steve on a lot of this stuff. And I encourage all of you to, stop in, come in early, stay late, and sit down and talk with someone that can explain it a little better than I can to you, sitting on either side of me. So,
Thanks, Bob.
great. That being said, any, Commissioner Kleinfeld?
When she was speaking about the chiller replacement, she mentioned you want to get as much life out of something as you can. So even if you plan on fixing it this particular year, if it's still working, you don't want to do that. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think wherein the problem lies is if you put money in the budget to replace something this year and it's still running and you don't replace it, I believe you should be able to carry that money over to the next year on top of the dollar amount. But if you then spend that entire budget and you haven't replaced that item, which is what has been happening in a lot of, I think due to all the other things that are out of your control, you understand what I'm saying? But my opinion is if once you spend it on another item, then we're gonna have a hard time because now we're not carrying over, we're now upping next year's budget. If we can reach a point where we have a set dollar amount that we know we can live with and you can carry that money over and we have an emergency contingency, you could also carry that over. So if you had a big emergency occur, the extra money was already built into the budget. I think that's where I'm coming from. I agree on the needs and wants, but I don't think these are them. I think the time to have that discussion was 2012. This room is a want. These items on this list are needs. IT may be a different situation, I agree with you. But that is why this is happening. So that's all, thank you.
And if I could add, I think we need to improve our communications. After we do inspections and we decide it's going to make it another season, I think we need to communicate that better.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Lynn. If I may take that familiarity and say Lynn, because I'm a newbie here and I really don't know you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Just a simple question. I've counted 10 of these items that are starting in either 21 all the way through to 23 or 24. So my question is, why are I know we want to plan ahead, but why are we discussing this now when in case you may not need this till 22 or 23 or 24?
We've always been presenting a 5-year capital
Okay.
plan so they can do some planning in advance.
So it's a 5-year plan that
yes.
we're looking at?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Majek. Oh, yeah, okay, great. Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on Commissioner Kleinfeld and your comments. First, I'm glad that you are working with some folks to improve and fine-tune how we approach capital projects. I think Commissioner Kleinfeld made some good points. One challenge that we as commissioners are going to have is I have no way of knowing whether or not the boiler needs to be replaced or not. I mean, how can we sit here and question, are we going to go inspect the electrical underground in a building to determine ourselves? At the same time, it's clear we want to have better oversight over some decisions that may be made if we don't approve each and every project, whereas there's been concern that some of that money has been then moved over to other projects that were never originally on the plan. So I hope that we are able to come up with a plan where we approve a set amount of money, like Commissioner Kleinfeld said, which creates a more honest budget instead of putting no capital plans in the budget and then saying, oh, there's our budget for the year. It should be budgeted for, but then have that same accountability. Maybe it's quarterly that they come before the board and update us on how that money is being spent and something. So I think the process is more important. I'm not sure it's going to be helpful to me, at least as a commissioner, to go down this list and talk about the electrical problems we may have in 2021 underground. How the hell I know? So I would hope that we move on with the process rather than walking through this list unless somebody's got a specific question on a specific item on the list.
Yeah, Commissioner Drollet, if you kind of see most of these questions aren't really based on the chiller replacement. They are based on a kind of overall concept in general. And Lynn, like you said, there isn't really a lot of discussion to be had, especially on, the ones in 21, 22, and 23. A little more maybe on the ones that are up and coming and why, you see that they are. But like Commissioner Drollet said, we're not the experts here, but we're trying to get a feel for the decision-making and why, and you've always been great with this, so it's, it's kind of it's tough when we're talking to you about the way you come in and ask us for things and explain things because you do it really well. We're trying to work with finance, though, Commissioner Drollet, on, more of a decision matrix process for everybody, to use for their capital projects so that, when they come to us with it, like you said, we don't know a chiller from a boiler, right? I mean, well, I guess one's cold and one's hot. But, in IT and all of that stuff, to have more of a matrix that actually has a scored scale where basically, we know that the items coming to us are at the top of their list based on, things that we've worked on together to try to come up with. And that's what we're looking at doing right now. And you're right, we have to trust our department heads that this is what's needed the most, the soonest. But at the same time, if we have a set amount of money in there, it's, it behooves them to put the most emergent ones first, right? I mean, because we should have a policy that, sorry, we don't have an emergency fund left over for it, right? So you have to do some very good planning. And Carrie, go ahead. I'll let you have
Mr.
some.
Chair, thank you. Wouldn't that be relatively, it sounds just based on those comments, it could be as simple as saying, all right, for capital improvements this year, you have this number of dollars. You prioritize it as your departments, as you, the executive and your departments believe it's most necessary. But if you're gonna ask for more, you've got to drop something off, or you've got to make a very compelling case to us that their building collapsed.
We've been having that discussion, that's really how it should work, that you get 10 million, let's just say, and then if something outside of that 10 million comes in, then the bottom one drops off to next year. I mean, that's how, or fills the spot if it was a spot that was, out of next year's that needed to be moved up to this year. We are having that discussion. So if we could have that discussion offline outside of this right now, that would be probably more productive.
Okay.
But
I don't mind having it in public.
No, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
that we are talking about it,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure that that's Lynn's, F&O's issue.
Okay. Well, it sounds like I'm glad that there's progress being made on that, because I think it sounds like the way to go.
Great.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
we'll
Chair.
talk more about it. And even in new business, we can talk about it in open, but I don't want to keep Lynn here while we're talking about what policies we should make for, the rest of the county when it comes down, but
I don't
she'll
want
be
to keep
part of
Lynn
it.
here talking about boilers in the sheriff's office.
Well,
or something,
that'll go fast. Well, right, so once Lynn's done, which probably should go fast, we can discuss all of these things that we're talking about without holding her here. So Commissioner Carabelli's next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great discussion. Let's put a little historical value to this. Commissioner Romano, who stepped out, had asked, 5 years, why is she showing it? Lynn, I've had the opportunity to work really close with the first 2 years I was here at the county. And I got a good understanding of how she runs her department and what she does. She's showing you this list of $110 million if you total it all up, because this is anticipated cost that has to be done. Now, with that said, she does a good guesstimate when these things will hit. So don't be surprised if something that's budgeted out to 2022 pops early and it has to be moved forward. Hers is an educational process right now to say, hey, there's $110 million that I can see that needs to be addressed within a 5-year period. If she moves it out, she moves it out. Now, if we talk about budgeting and saying if something costs $375 and she didn't do it, well, that money should not be spent for anything else other than that, and it would carry over to the following year instead of just going back to the general fund. This is something we can talk about later. But because she guesses on that cost, it could be $300,000, it could be $400,000. She's getting with her experts to get a guesstimate of what this stuff is going to cost when it happens. So the 5-year plan is so important because you can see $110 million has to happen. Now, needs and wants. I think Commissioner Kleinfeld said, well, these are needs. Agreed, these are needs. These are needs that we see operationally, and I talked to Jen and Bob a little earlier. I don't know, I almost want to have an operational capital line for repairs and stuff, and then capital projects for actually new stuff, which then goes into your needs and wants, which is a totally subjective type of area. But when you're talking about operational, when the chillers go, they go. The money's going to be spent. It could have been said in 2022, 21, whatever year. She's given you a forecast, the best of her ability and her professionals, of what she thinks it's going to be. So I wanted to clarify that first of all. On these, Steve, we would fall back into you. You know, we talked briefly, I think it was called the Majestic Building, and whoever the renter is that isn't leaving was here a week, 2 weeks ago, saying that, is it, who's the other renter in there? One of them's leaving, one of them's staying.
The state's leaving Majestic, and Michigan Works, Chris Riley's group.
And I believe I asked him, he's willing to go wherever you tell him to go. And I know it's the executive's office and decision, please have him take a
Right.
good look at it, because do we
I
want to
still need to
spend?
follow up with him on what the lease term is, where they're at today.
I'd look at it and then look at what she has projected out that has to be spent in that building. It may
Yeah, I don't
help-
know, yeah, you're right. I
It
know
may
where you're
help you
going.
formulate your decision on where, if we should keep that property or not. That's not my job, but I wanted to point out that if you got $500,000 going to be spent in a couple of years, and we don't have the other part of the building, and we can get out, I get out. That's just my 2 cents, and then go back on the tax rolls for the city of Warren. Now, Bob asked the chair asked a question in the beginning, and I misunderstood. The way I'm reading this, the current year, the chillers, when you had mentioned that on item number 2, it's listed for 2021. Did you state that next year you were going to look at doing that, or did I misunderstand?
It's 2021.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, because I misunderstood then. All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lynn, good to see you. You know, in going forward here, I don't know if it's our intention to have Lynn go through all 31 of these items and explain them to us. The reality of it is that, you know, I'm looking ahead here and reading about each one of these things, and I agree with Commissioner Myjack and Carabelli and Drollet. We're not here to micromanage Lynn in what she's presented to us as the 5-year forecast. I think what we really want to do as a board is sort of take a look and maybe talk with Steve in terms of how we want to budget this out for the next 5 years. Now, I'm just looking at something here. And Lynn, excuse me, I know you're at the podium here. This is really just more of a comment than a question to you. If you look, I'm going to take out IT, because I'm going to assume Steve Technology and Equipment Projects says detail attached. I don't see that on here. But is that IT?
There's another page on the actual capital plan that we submitted to you. I think,
Okay.
I'm guessing that page is gonna be on the meeting of the 22nd.
Okay. If we look, I'm just pointing this out, Steve. If I take IT out, the total amount for this current plan is about $28 million, 29, almost $29 million. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, if you add the extra $9 million, you'd be at 38. But for now, we're at $29 million.
Correct.
If we look at the next 5 years, if I take 29 and divide it by 5, that's almost 30, right? 30 million divided by 5, that's almost $6 million a year. Would it be possible that we just say, look, we're going to put $6 million every year into the capital improvement plan? Now, we know this year it's intended that $4 million is going to come out right off the bat for the 800 megahertz. That's going to be the big project there. I don't know what the other $1,920,000 is for central campus renovation.
It's gonna be finished
Spread out.
in the spring, so there's a little bit of carryover.
Okay, so there's a little carryover. I'm just thinking, if we're worried about our budget spending, if we just say, look, we've got another, I'm not counting IT, this 10 million with IT, they're gonna have to address when they come in. But what we see now with what Lynn has, items 1 through 31, it looks to me like it's about $30 million. And if we divide that out by 5, that's $6 million a year. We know we're gonna get hit with the biggest one right now, which is the radio replacement. That's $4 million. After that, sometimes we spend $6 million, sometimes we don't. We just keep it at $6 million every year. Is that something that we can conceivably do? And I'm going to assume this year property revenues are up. I think they're going to be up again next year. Then we'll see how things play out. But I mean,
I would say that the thought process is going the right direction. So if you look at my forecast for 10 years, eventually it levels out in 2 or 3 years to a baseline of $7.5 million just every year. Just $7.5 million, somewhere where you're going.
Right.
So, but that would include funding for IT projects as well.
Right. Your 7.5 includes IT. That's just something that we're
Exactly.
going to have to take a look at. Maybe
Right.
look at this
and
again.
so you don't know, you'll see on here that the IT numbers go down very significantly in the 4th and 5th years because,
Right.
it's harder for JACO to, project out that far. So that's why we've kind of got a baseline because we kind of know there's always going to be IT needs.
And I
so-
understand that. And hopefully what can happen is this. Maybe, we got this big one coming up. I get the megahertz. That's a $4 million deal. Once we get that out of the way, most of these other projects are less than $1 million. Some of them are even less than $500,000. You know what I mean? So it seems to me like, as Commissioner Carabelli says, if something comes up quick, we have enough. If we did $6 million a year, we have enough, hopefully to take care of an emergency, and then every year we just spill it over into the next one. In other words, we don't have to take any more from the general fund going forward. If we just do $6 million each year, and let's say in the first year we'll only spend 5.5 of that, we take that 500, and next year we say, okay, now we got 6.5. And then in the next year, let's say we only spend 4. Okay, now we've got 6 plus the 2.5, that we didn't spend. Now we got 8.5. So it'll always still be there and earmarked. But
I think 19 is a little bit of an anomaly.
Yeah, because it's a lot. It's $11 million, and I think
Because you've got 11, so you've got $2 million to finish the Central Campus project, and $4 million to,
for the radio.
For the radio. So
Right.
it's a little bit of an anomaly, and those things the rest of those items on the list could very well, be necessities in that year. I think, again, along your lines of thinking, when you get out a year or two, if you go to a baseline amount and say, well, this is what it is. Now, when you get out 3 years and you say, well, it's $7.5 million, there may be things that pop up on the list that are going to cause that to go over.
Well, we understand that.
and
But
so
I think the
that's,
idea would be that we say for the next 5 years, we're going to say we're
In theory, yeah.
Yeah, we're dedicating $30 million. Again, I'm not
Right.
including IT because that's a
Yeah,
mystery.
just understand that
It's
that
there.
could
It's there, right.
ebb and flow a little bit.
Right, but I think what that does then, doesn't that give the department heads and the executive everything to say, okay, this commission only gave us $6 million. It forces them to say, okay, what needs to be done right away? I get it, the radio's got to be done right away. We got to get that $4 million on this one right away. But perhaps, assuming nothing goes wrong, we can bump the $450 for item number 16, which is probate court demolition, maybe back into 2020 and take it out of the $6 million from that year. You know what I mean? It just seems like. Yeah.
Great points, but they're trying to budget this out to show you what's going to hit, and you can move that $450,000, take it out and not demo it. But remember, the maintenance of that building is going to cost you $300,000 a year, and the longer you put it off, you're throwing good money after bad. So everything you're saying is making sense. But when I try to explain operational compared to new brick and mortar or new projects, two different things. That $110 million will be spent, and you can't dictate when it's going to happen. She's going to guesstimate when it's going to hit. This is a little bit different than saying, hey, you don't need to have a new expansion to the parking garage because you can't afford it because the money isn't there. I think those are two different areas that I guess we need to talk about.
I guess what I'm seeing is this. I'm just seeing if we have a consistent amount that we put into the capital improvement project every year, then when we see a chart like this, department heads are going to be taking a look and saying, okay, we only got 6. What has to be done now? Now, there's going to be an emergency. We know that, and maybe then at that point we'll have to tap into the general fund and put more into that 6. But then there's going to be years maybe where they don't spend the 6, and we can carry that over. So I don't know. It's just something to think about. I get your baseline, Steve. I think we're thinking along the same lines.
The bigger challenge is to determine what's that proper baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 6, 7, 7.5, 8?
I think so. And the other thing, too, is, when we look at budget spending, this year, like Commissioner Majek said, revenues are pretty good this year, right? Maybe next year revenues will be higher. So then when we look at it, we can say, well, okay, maybe we can add another $1 million to it or something like that. It just seems like I would like to baseline. I would. And I would like a consistent amount over the 5 years. And that way, I think that's the only way we can maybe control it a little bit. You know what I mean, with department heads, so they know, okay, this commission's only going to give $6 million. We got to prioritize amongst ourselves what's going to happen first. Sheriff needs the 800 megahertz radios. You got it, and then in exchange for that, I'm going to hold off on some IT stuff. You know what I mean? Whatever.
Yeah, I think when you get into your department request, it's almost all in the IT. You know, so Lynn's done a good job of scheduling this out, and these things, as Commissioner Caravelli pointed out, are gonna happen at some point in time.
Well, I know that,
So
and that's why we got a
it's-
budget for it.
It's the IT where you get your you need a new system of this, that, or the other thing, and then there's all sorts of associated maintenance costs that go with it and things like that. So I think your IT is where you get more of your wants versus your needs.
Okay. All right, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And as a note, we have been talking about, you know, setting a general, like, set amount like that to, you know, kind of living within a certain budget. It makes it easier for everybody to come up with, you know, their wants versus their needs by having a set amount that works within the budget. We've talked about a set amount. We've talked about a percentage of, you know, depending on if property taxes go up or down, that percentage might go up or down. We've talked about a few different ways. So that is in the discussion. If you want to sit down, you know, and talk about it and give your ideas, those are ideas that we are all talking about, that we're all going to come together on and you know, have a get together, you know, several times over on where we should go with this. Hopefully, you know, on board with the finance department, the executive's office, to make this work for everybody. Commissioner Drollet. Oh, Kleinfeld, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I agree with what Commissioner Leonetti is saying. The problem is every year that we get one of these, it's heavy in the first couple years and it starts to get smaller, smaller, and smaller. But when those years come around, it's never it's never
Well,
at
that's
that.
the idea of a baseline kind of an amount.
So I don't believe for a second that 22 and 23 are remotely accurate. 6 million isn't going to work. They're going to be short every year. I know what's going to happen because it's been coming in more like 12 million over and over and over again since I got on. So I don't know what the magic number is, but I know that this 5-year forecast has changed dramatically every year over and over again. So when I see these numbers out, you can't believe them. You know, I understand that they're doing this to the best of their ability, but there's going to be new things that are on the list in 2 years, and I think that's the thing we need to be realistic about. And the other problem, which is what brought this whole thing up, was if something goes early, like we talked about, and we have to take money and put it in, guess what happens? The year that that's up, the dollar amount doesn't drop because that's off the list. The dollar amount has always stayed at that level. That's what the issue is. If we're paying early, we'd be willing to do that, but then that dollar amount should come off of the list in the year that we anticipated it to break. That's where I think where we're trying to get. I just have one question with regard to this list. I don't want to go through them all either, but I am really curious about something. Why would, like the administration chiller replacement, if the first year it was on the plan was 2002, if the first year it was on the plan was 2015, why would that be moved all the way out to 2021? And then another one, the Independence Building HVAC renovations, the first year it was on the plan was 2014. So why have we moved that all the way down to 2022? Is it realistic? Do we now believe it's going to make it to 2022?
I don't recall having the chiller on for 2015.
14, 2015, it says year
The first
first.
time it appeared on a plan.
Oh,
I don't know what year it was on.
Oh, you're thinking, so what you're saying is in 2015, it may have appeared on the plan, but it may have appeared further out?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Kleinfeld anticipated most of my comments, so I'll be short. I'm just more curious. Again, if the easiest thing to do is say, well, we're going to blow some big money this year, but don't worry, in 3 years, look how little we're going to blow in the future. And that's so easy to do. So I guess my question to Steve is, have we been spending what have been the actual capital plan expenditures per year in the last 5 years, 10 years, so we can look out and say what's realistic for the next 5 years? Has it been $6 million a year, or has it been substantially more
Yeah,
than that?
it's not 6, but again, some of what we spent out of the capital in prior years is now in the general fund. So we've got about 11.5 million. If you think about 7.5 million as a baseline, we got about $3.5 million of parking lot, roofing, all that stuff. So we got about 11 million in total
So it's been
as a baseline. if you want.
around 11 million per year.
Well, I don't know about the actuals, but that's what's forecasted or what I think would be in the budgets. I'd have to look back.
Okay,
to the last
okay,
several
that'd be
years.
your
It's
sort
more
of-
than 6 million.
Okay, it's sort of your
I can
guesstimate.
almost-
So yeah, it's kind of a little unrealistic then for us to look forward and say, well, in the future, nothing's going to break like it has in the last 10 years or something. So I just want to make sure we don't create that fallacy of thinking that we can go ahead and spend money now, but don't worry, we'll make up for it in the future.
And Commissioner Drollet, Crystal has that information on what we've spent in capital for the last bunch of years. So if you want to get, an average, obviously it's going to be a little skewed because we did the downtown renovation, which is, hopefully a once in a, our lifetime type of project. So that, kind of throws things off when you throw that kind of money in the middle of it. But
There'll always be something, whether it's the jail coming up or this or that. There's a big once in a lifetime project multiple times in our lifetimes.
well, hopefully the jail is going to be a complete different source of money, but we'll talk about that. Anyway, I don't have any other speakers on here, Lynn, and I agree. I'm not really here to decide. I know you will put everything. If you don't think that something that's scheduled for next year needs to be done, I know that you will, extend the life of it as long as possible.
Yes.
I guess my only question, and we can, look at this as a group thing. I don't need you to go through everything on here. My question is, let's just say on the 800 megahertz or the central campus renovations, are those all of that money slated to be spent in 2019? Because I guess one of my questions is how many of these projects are going to be, and I see a couple of them, you have multiple years on them, but are those two in particular, all of that money slated to be spent in 19?
The 800 megahertz is actually not our project. It's emergency management.
Okay, all right, great.
Yeah, I believe that.
Nope, I just saw this on this
Yeah.
list, so that's why I
Yeah,
was.
that's the project I was speaking about earlier that Vicky will be talking about.
Got
Either
it.
you can talk to her tomorrow when she's here for her budget.
Okay, Crystal
or
was
on the
talking to me, I
22nd.
didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, but so any of your projects that you've seen as being multi-year projects, you've actually identified them and tried to space that out over the multiple years that you think it's going to take to do the project, correct?
Yes, we've tried to. A lot of the projects, because they're mechanical, we have a small window to work within because you want to work on cooling when there isn't a demand for cooling, and you want to work on heating when there isn't a demand for heating. There's one project, and it's the court building. We've bridged 2 years. I've put in a healthy number. I'm hoping that we don't get near that number, but when we get further into the project and get ready to put formal bid package out there, you're going to inspect the bearings, you're going to inspect the dampers, you're going to take a look at the piping. So I sort of went a little heavy on that number, and I'm hopeful that we won't get near that number. But because of the lead times on some of this equipment, it might take 4 to 8 weeks to actually get some of this installed, and you only have, like at the court building, it's for heating and cooling. So the opportunity is when there's low demand for heat and low demand for cooling. So you're talking about the spring or fall. So a lot of these we spanned 2 years because of that. If we can do it within 1 year, we will attempt to do that. Another project is the Clemens Center. There's 24 rooftop units on that building. The newest rooftop units is probably from 2002. The rest are much older. We're evaluating, the cost of you have to get a crane. Even though we might get another season or two out of some of these rooftop units, we may elect to replace them because of the crane costs.
Is that on here? The
Yes.
Clemens Center? I'm sorry, maybe I'm missing it. That's court building. Oh,
Number
Clemens Center, 6. Okay, thank you.
Number 6.
All right.
And I want to caution, some of these projects, especially 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, there has been no engineering done on it. So they're closer to our best guess, our best estimate. It's not until they do all the engineering and do detailed estimates that we will have some good numbers.
Right. So basically, though, you guys, and I'm pretty sure that this happens, you have a list, an inventory of all the rooftop units and all the chillers and lists of when they've been replaced and when the anticipated date is and all of that stuff. And that's kind of how you go on this. So we're not going to find some chiller or rooftop unit from you, I would imagine, that's, 40 years old that we didn't know about. You guys have a kind of an inventory of all
Yes.
of the mechanicals on all of the
Yes.
buildings that we own. And,
Yes. We do have a boiler that's 45 years old.
Great. And then to Commissioner Carabelli's point, when you were talking about the buildings that we may or may not be able to fill and rent, and what we're looking at putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into them, I would hope that before, those come to the point where you're asking for that money or using that money, that we have that discussion on whether it's feasible to even put that money in, if we're ever even going to make it back, based on, some of the lost rentals on some of these buildings. But-
Absolutely. Majestic Plaza, there's 11 rooftop units. I have every indication that the state is going to move out. They're in the final step of approval. Whether it's for Coolin Building that they're vacating or Majestic, they're looking at new construction. And it's about 35,000 square feet at Vercoolin and about 24 or 25,000 at Majestic. I think if we do not have an intended purpose for that square footage, there is a reverter clause. I think we should sit down with the owner of the reversionary interest and maybe we give that back to him sooner rather than later, rather than carrying some fixed costs for square footage that we're not going to use. But to get to that point, I need some sort of, I want to wait till there's final approval from the state that they are leaving. And then in this Majestic Plaza, there's a lot of interconnections of systems. So we're going to have to weed through that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Carabelli, are you up again? Okay, thanks. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of quick observations and points. This $4 million for the 800 megahertz is a complete different system, correct, Steve? It's a brand-new system replacing all the radios.
All the radios.
Okay. So keep in mind, in 10 years, when they all get it replaced again, bam, we're getting smacked in the head all at one time for another 4 or 10 or whatever the cost is going to be. Instead of stepping it like we try to do with some of the vehicles and different things, replace them at a constant basis. So these are concerns to keep in mind. Commissioner Chair Smith brought up the Majestic that I brought up earlier, but I guess I would challenge you, Steve, in risk management or whoever has the titles to all these buildings that we have, and really take a close look at what do we need. Like the Clemens Center, who's all renting out of there now? Who's all in there? Well, who are the occupants?
We have circuit court probation over there. We have elections over there. We also have a tenant,
That's the one right next to the
Lakeshore
Talmer building,
Legal.
right?
This is the Clemens Center.
Is that next to the Talmer?
Yes, yes, the strip mall.
Okay. Yeah.
And on the other end, Clark is temporarily using an office during the construction project. We have some, I believe it's a parole reentry program.
Yeah.
And,
Prisoner reentry.
and My Care is also in that space.
Okay.
As a
And my point
tenant.
for stating that is that we have a lot of different facilities. I commend Deputy Executive and Steve when they sat down and explained that they had the one building, the cost to upkeep it and to try to bring it where it needs to be, it's better off to knock it down and have vacant dirt than those ongoing costs long-term. What else do we have that makes the most sense on some of these things? Lynn, you do what you're directed to do. I look at the Juvenile Justice Center. We're less than 30% occupied. We got to replace chillers. Do we close down half of it and only? There's a lot of things that I guess need to be looked at. If we're not going to use it for something else, why are we cooling the whole building? Why can't we block it off? again, I'm not here to micromanage. I just look at the bigger picture and the cost of us doing business. And it's like, I know you're frugal, I know you're trying to plan out and you're trying to do your job. But if we don't give you the tools to do your job and say, yeah, keep that old thing going, even though we're not using it at full capacity, keep it going at 100%, shame on us. So I guess we need to take a real good study and look at what we have and what is worth keeping and moving forward and what is worth cutting back. And I think that makes a difference, long-term on this budget. And again, Steve, that, I guess risk management, yourself and the executive's office really needs to take a look at these things. And it'll make her job a lot easier once you take some of these old things if we don't need and get them off our books. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Drolet for round 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lynn, when was the last time we did like a general space management plan? Has it been a number of years since we did a comprehensive look at all the buildings we've owned, all the occupancy levels, and
I mean, with an outside company actually doing a space needs?
I remember in one of my previous incarnations on the board that was done with an outside company. And I don't know if it's the last time that's been done. I'm not suggesting we do it with an outside company this time, because frankly, I'd rather have you do it. But I concur with some of the other speakers. It sounds like we keep talking about losing tenants and trying to find tenants in buildings that are partly occupied and 30% occupancy in the Juvenile Justice Center. And it sounds like we have just too many properties. And, I don't know if it would make sense for the executive to take a more intense look and say, how can we unload some of these things as one less boiler to repair and one less client to try and retain, or one less person we have to find to rent it out to. So I don't know when that's been last done comprehensively, or if it's something that's continuously done.
Comprehensively from an outside space planners, 1975.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay. So, and when's the last time you feel it's been done to your satisfaction?
Well, there's a lot of factors to go into it. Us as facilities can't really go into departments and say, well, you don't need that. It's very hard for us to do that.
We trust you.
But we're definitely starting to take a look at that kind of thing. That's why we do have probate court on here to be demolished. We're hoping that, yes, the state leaves Verkulen building, health department moves in there, and we can demolish Mount Clemens Health. So we are starting to look in that direction.
Okay, that's good to know. And I wonder and hope there might be more that we can be doing to consolidate so we don't end up with as many boilers and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else on the list. And Lynn, if there's nothing else that you feel is really important to talk to us about, I think that we are good.
So you don't want me to explain them all?
Yeah. You'll explain them
Spent
enough when
all
you come
afternoon.
before us on them. No, we want Steve to explain them all. You can leave. Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much. Let me get back to this. So give me a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Lucido, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Please vote. Oh, yes, go ahead.
If I can just add, we wanted to extend an invitation. If any commissioner would like to come out and take a look at these systems, we'd be more than happy to show you what we're talking about.
Great, thank you. Great, motion passes. Item number 10, new business. Any commissioners have any new business to discuss? What's that? You don't have to be quick.
Knocking things over. I better be quick and get out of here. Real quick on this, I do think, because we're just going to start having the general discussions on the budget. I think when we pick whatever that dollar amount is, in all fairness, the first year should be a couple million higher, because we have to recognize that that 2 million that's part of the central is not part of the regular renovations. That was expenses that were unanticipated, and it's not fair to take the money from her needs to cover that cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And we have talked about this. I'm going to let Jen talk for a little bit about some of the things we've been doing. I encourage all of you to stop in and talk with her about your ideas on where we want to go with this budget and where we want to go with our policies in the future. I mean, I don't want it to be at the last minute, everybody's, wondering what's going on, and instead of coming and giving everybody, your ideas, so we can throw it all out there and come up with the best for the board and for the county. That being said, Commissioner Kleinfeld, we have been discussing, pursuant to that steady number, that sure you would have to ease into anything like that, right? Based on where they're at with projects but at the same time, when, it comes down to IT, squeezing the wants versus the needs, and. Sure. So that being said, I'm going to turn this over just on a little budget talk and policy talk to Jen for a few minutes, and then if anyone has any questions, please chime in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I love listening to your discussions. I just want to say that because you guys hit on the exact right things to be talking about in terms of the fund balance policy and in terms of, the capital projects. And we're not HVAC experts and we don't know plumbing and, that all makes perfect sense to me. And as somebody who's been on the other side, they really are the experts and they really do know, what is the next step and what's the most important thing to do. The challenge is what level of information do you need to feel comfortable with appropriating the dollars to them, and to saying, okay, you've asked for $11 million in facilities costs, including the 800 megahertz radio project. What does that really mean to us as a board and to our responsibility to the taxpayer to be accountable for those assets and the infrastructure that the county owns? So in my mind, and what I heard you saying and what we've been talking about and thinking about is you're really looking for a prioritization matrix. You're looking for something that has, 6 or 7 different criteria that are prepared by, finance and facilities and in the executive's office that gives you a list. Okay, we've got a criteria of safety. That's an issue for us. Is it a requirement that we do this? Is it mandated by some sort of state, federal, or local regulation? Is it going to create some sort of cost savings? Or is it going to increase our ongoing costs? And, you identify those criteria and then you score them on a 1, 5, and 10, high, medium, and low. And you come up with this generally objective number that, projects pop to the top of the list, then the board, if you decide to do a set aside on an annual amount, you've only got X amount of dollars, so the line gets drawn, the ones above the line get funded, the ones below don't. And that's kind of one of the strategies that I hear that you want to see is how are these projects identified and how do they rank up against each other? So that's kind of one of the things we've been talking about, and starting the conversation with the Steves, with Steve in Finance and the other Steve in Finance, to be able to say, are these needs, are they wants, and then what are they based on? And they're both very familiar with what I'm talking about. It's not, it's best practice in the finance world to have criteria like this. So I think they will most likely jump on board and be more than willing to provide the information for you. It just takes time to put together. But that would make you a lot more comfortable with the decisions that you're being asked to make in terms of appropriating those dollars.
Anything on that? Otherwise, I want to go to. I'm having a senior moment. Someone ask a question so I can remember what I was just thinking. Some of the other things that we've talked about, having a set amount based on, a number that we've agreed to with finance and rolling it, down to a steady number where we are just, I know what I want to talk about. Having a set aside for emergencies, because right now they base everything on 100% expenditures. So we would say we have $11 million we want, we're forecasting spending $11 million so that every emergency that comes in, they're trying to get it out of the general fund. I think what we're looking at least what I can see from everybody is if an emergency comes in, that goes up and it bumps something off the list to next year. And it's not our decision necessarily what gets bumped off, but it's just like your home budget. I think when we start looking at this, it's probably best to look at it like your home budget. You're not going to make much more next year. You might make 2% more, so you can't spend 10% more. And sooner or later, we have to live like at home. All right? I'd like to finish my driveway. But that's not high on the list. Fixing my air conditioner is, because it's 90 out, right, type of thing. So that's some of the things that we've been talking about. You're also going to give them a, what were you talking about, getting out to them? Not today, but.
I prepared a draft memo on the fund balance and how the board may want to address the fund balance in terms of your authority to appropriate funds. And it was interesting, I had a conversation with Steve before the meeting, and he's like, well, I don't know how much authority the board has. And I said, well, this is something to guide the board's decision-making process. So when you set that 20% limit on the general fund balance, you know as a board that's your goal for the county's fiscal stability. So it was an interesting little exchange there. But as a board, yes, setting the dollar amount, for your general fund reserve, fund balance is something that you're going to want to do. You may want to consider adopting how it is actually calculated and on what basis. And it's basically, is it total expenditures including the transfers out, or is it total expenditures not including the transfers out? So there, it's just a math equation. You just need to decide those two things. Once you have that set, you'll have a consistent number that you can rely on and use as a goal, as a board, as you look to the budget. Then there's a question about what you want to include in that fund balance. And I've got this laid out in what I think is a simple memo, and I'd be happy to put it into a different format or to talk through it with you. But it's basically 3 questions that as you, as a board, answer, you'll be able to set those standards for you and for the decision-making process going forward regarding the budget.
That's one of the things that I wanted to bring up. And last year, we had the same issue, and when we talk about general fund and how we get to that percentage, right? I mean, do we use the auditor's numbers, or do we use finance's numbers? And last year, we saw that there were the numbers were the same, but what they included in the calculation is different, and that's the problem. All the numbers are the numbers. The auditors use some different expenditures in the numbers, which is also backed up by general acceptable accounting principles, I think, which is, kind of what we are under. And Steve explained last year to us, and obviously to our satisfaction, that that his numbers were the numbers to use. So I think what we have to do here, and I've called Platt Moran and asked them to come in, and I want to have Steve in at the same meeting to discuss which set of numbers we should be using, because that's first and foremost as to where we're going with this, right? I mean, what number would we like to see for a minimum fund balance, and then what numbers are we using to achieve that goal, right? And so I'm going to ask Platt Moran to come in and kind of discuss that as to why we should use their numbers, and at the same time, maybe Steve has a good reason that he can tell us why we should be using a different equation, not numbers, but different equation to get to that number. And then we can kind of start formulating what we're going to do from there on out. So if anyone has any questions or comments, obviously, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Yeah, so all this discussion we just had about the capital projects, once we get to what he's talking about, if we say every year before budget, if we set the budget can only grow by 3%, then we're not sitting here deciding whether or not one department gets a position and another department doesn't. They know what we're going to. They don't have to submit a budget that falls within that. They're not required to submit anything based on what we've said. But if we say, as a board, when they're creating the budget, we would like the budget to stay within these parameters, whatever the percentage is, we might have a lot less to go through during budget time. Thank you.
If I may, and I think that's an excellent idea. And at the same time, when we do that, I think we should also tell them, listen, in the event that you do need additional funds for whatever you decide you're going to need, you decide what you're going to cut in your department. Because we'll give you those funds, but we're not going to give you a bulky fund. You cut that need down in your department, and we'll give you the funds that you need to match what you're going to have in lieu of what you want to have.
Right. I agree. That's taking the management out of, and we're not trying to manage, but we have a certain amount that we feel is right for the county, and as kind of protectors of the general fund and the money, we say X amount, you do however you want to do it. And that's, I agree. And what Commissioner Kleinfeld was talking about, we're not trying to really change anything this year. This is, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel and make them go back and redo a whole budget. But we need to start coming to grips with where we want to be, where we think it should be, and start working it that way, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, I don't care, what anybody says right now. Steve could be working somewhere else. We could be off this board. Executive Hackle could be in the governor's office, and things turn sideways here. And you know what it's going to come back to? Why didn't the board hold? Why were we under our 15%? We didn't have enough money to fix this when things hit the fan. So we always have to remember we are the final. And when everything's going good, no one even knows we're here. But when it goes bad, I guarantee you the finger will be pointed right to this board approving a budget. So that's what we have to, think about as we're moving forward with this. So that being said, please, any of your ideas and we can keep talking, but any of your ideas that come out of these meetings, please bring them out in these type of forums or individually to, bring them to Jen, bring them to myself, come as a group, whatever we have to do to come together with something that we all feel, and like I say, we've been talking with the executive's office, and when I say that, mostly the Steves, because that's the biggest part of this, but Marilyn Lane was up here, and Jen had a talk with her, and then we shared it with Deputy Executive Delden, where we're at so far with the numbers. A lot will help when Steve comes in a couple weeks on the new revenues to kind of help rectify this year and maybe going into next year. So let's just, keep moving forward. We have a target date of November 1st, generally speaking, with this budget, but we're not in that kind of a rush where we have to do something if we're not ready for it. Commissioner Leonetti, it looked like you would like to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do agree with you, and as been pointed out by everybody here, I think, we're not experts in heating and cooling. Maybe some of us are. We're not experts in being sheriffs. Some of us might have a law background. The bottom line is the only thing we're really here to do as a board is to be the fiduciary for the taxpayers' dollars. And like you said, Chairman Smith, is, as long as we do our job there, then we're fulfilling our role and our function in this form of county government. With that said, Jen, I have a couple questions based on what you were saying. So it is best practice or customary practice to do 20% on fund balance, pretty much?
It's generally arranged between 15 and 20.
Okay.
The executive's policy here is 20%. I talked with Steve just right before the meeting as part of that conversation, and he felt most comfortable with the 20% based on the total amount, not the various categories within the fund balance.
Okay, and that's the next question I had. So the 20%, I guess is that the difference between what Plant Moran said and what Steve said? Are we looking at a difference there or no?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the annual audit includes transfers out and total expenditures, and it's just an accounting
Okay.
Difference in terms of that calculation. And those are the two pieces. It appears as though finance may sometimes not include transfers out, and so it's a larger percentage of a smaller number.
Okay, then in that regard, what is the customary practice or best practice with respect to that? Would Plant Moran be right, or would Steve be right in terms of how we look at things?
I would tend to follow the Government Finance Officers Association and the Governmental Accounting Standards Board recommendation, which is consistent with the auditors.
Okay, so Plant Moran's approach is consistent with best practice?
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
She said the same thing, only a lot longer.
No. Yeah, usually it's the other way around, right? Okay, so these are things we're going to be taking a look at. We can come to talk to you about, and we're going to have an idea of what we, obviously it's not going to happen for this year's budget. I get that. But going forward, it's something that we would want to address for the 2020 budget, I would say, for sure.
So I think just in light of the conversation that's happening regarding the fund balance, I think it would be appropriate for the board to consider adopting something either at the same time as the budget, but separate from the budget regarding the fund balance and what you want your standard to be for being funded. I think you also, at the same time, because I think the capital projects and the prioritization of those projects and how you evaluate them It's going to be important to communicate that as well to finance in the executive's office. So I would see that as kind of going at a similar time, because your decision on finance is going to impact the funding of the capital projects. So I have a couple of documents. It's probably a total of 6 pages, and I can probably boil it down to some bullets, but with just some recommended points for you to adopt a simple policy statement for the board, or an ordinance, or whatever you want to call it. But that will help to guide some of that, so that you have an understanding and you can be in agreement on just these basic things. Can I offer one more thing?
Sure, yeah.
On the capital projects, last year when you deappropriated those dollars from capital, that was a really strong move to do, and I think it really, it sent a strong message. And I think as you move forward in appropriating those dollars, perhaps doing them in sort of a project progress basis is going to be the best, so that you're not just now all of a sudden going back on the good decision that you made last year, but that you're incrementally funding these projects in terms of a planning phase, in terms of an architectural and design construction phase, a contingency set aside, and putting those dollars, designating them in the fund balance as assigned.
Okay, so then you don't think the baseline would be a good idea then? In other words, when I was talking to Steve, I was saying, well, what happens if we just give you like $6 million over 5 years? You're suggesting that we do it on a project basis, maybe annually? No.
No,
Okay.
you can still give them a lump sum, and I
Okay.
think that offers them planning stability.
Sure.
It offers you financial planning
Absolutely.
stability. So no, you can still do the lump sum, but it's whether or not you actually transfer those dollars over to the capital fund, where at that point then they're gone.
That's right.
So,
Okay.
So I think you've made such good ground in terms of promoting that accountability and transparency to the taxpayers through that move, that now we just need to take some incremental steps to make sure that transparency and the purchasing process continues to be followed.
And let me just say this too. One last question. Oh, go ahead.
Finish
Yeah.
on this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Explain assigned, unassigned, restricted funds and how that works in budgeting.
So, yeah, GASB statement number 54. What they sought to do was to standardize the classification of fund balance across governmental entities. And there are 5 different classifications of fund balance. So, you've got your total fund balance. Then within your fund balance, you've got restricted, non-spendable, committed, unassigned, and assigned. And how you calculate your fund balance, you can take all of those subcategories and put them together, which if you did that, you guys would have a total of approximately $54 million. Generally speaking, you use the unassigned dollars, because those are the dollars that are truly, an emergency happens, something, you need money, those are the dollars that you can use. So you just use that one of the 5 different categories. And so if you do that, you're at about 49 million, which is about 19.3%, if I remember correctly from the audit. So you're just under that 20% threshold, and that would, that doesn't address the 2018 moves and things that have happened since, but. Yeah, thank you very much. The capital dollars would actually, rather than be going over to the capital fund, would be held within the fund balance as assigned.
Okay.
So they're still on the books, you still have control of them, you would then appropriate those dollars from that assigned fund balance to the capital project in these incremental stages. So they're not available to be spent. If somebody's looking at the books, at the close of the year, they're going to see that, they're committed to something else. So it really doesn't count as a part of your total fund, as
Okay.
your unassigned fund balance.
Okay, no, that's good stuff. Jen, thanks a lot. I'll look forward to talking to you a little bit more in detail. Not necessarily.
Anytime.
You got it. Thank you.
And to that end, we've been talking about ways to make it a little easier and make it work better with finance. If we did hold that money in unassigned, in assigned, but in the general, how to get them their money right away for these projects that are under 35 and for early pre-engineering type stuff. So I have her working on that also to so that we're not just, last year it was a big step, but we needed to take a step farther to make it a little smooth out a little easier for the transfer of money that wasn't above the threshold. So that's something that we're trying to get right now too. And again, if you have ideas on that, please. take all ideas. She will. Anybody else on the, Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I realize this meeting was focused on the fund, rather on capital improvement projects, but some of the language that we continue to use in that conversation is wants versus needs. And I would challenge myself and the rest of the commissioners to apply that same approach to the rest of the budget as well, not just the capital improvement or the capital projects budget. And I would ask if a constituent came up to you and said, is there anything in that giant budget book that is a want more than a need at all? And if there is, why didn't you cut it? If we're challenged in all these other areas to stay, so we don't end up going to the fund balance. So I wonder if there's anything in this book that is not part of capital improvement project that is a want more than a need. Anything? 1% of the budget? 2%? Can we find it? I realize it's hard to do because so many things are, we're not going to eliminate the clerk's department or the prosecutor's office or anything like that. So it's hard to do. And a lot of that money is tied up in contracts with employees. We can't magically say, well, we're going to cut 2% of everything across the board because some things we can't cut because we're locked into contracts. So I would just ask the board, the individuals and myself included, to think about this. Is there anything in here that's a want and not a need? Now, I can come up with some things that I'll suggest later. But if we can't come up with anything, if we can't find a want and a need, shame on us for yelling, for challenging the executive to do it. No, we can't find a single thing in here that we would cut, not a penny. But you come up with some capital project stuff and you start making some cuts. So if we're going to talk it, we should be willing to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And on that note, don't wait to the last second, though. I would encourage anybody not to, I would encourage you not to wait to the last second to bring something up that people would want to actually look at and say, oh, shoot, you might be right. Or maybe there's any?
Patty scheduled meetings with all of them and me to go over everything.
Okay. Well, any meeting that you would like, but I think Patty scheduled meetings with all of you to go over some of these things too, so maybe we start it there. Okay.
Yeah, like next Friday. Yeah, is yours, yeah.
So I was planning to bring it then.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Then we'll bring it up and we'll all, I agree. Commissioner Majek.
Yeah, just a follow-up point of information for Leon. When we had budget deficit in the county 10 years ago during the Great Recession, we had to cut a lot of money and we had to eliminate jobs through attrition. That's what happened back then. And when you hold up the budget booklet like that, that's one of the things I think of because payroll and personnel is a big portion of the public sector. So I think there's two ways of going about that. Number one is I'm speaking for myself. Certain departments come up. I believe the Sheriff's Department wanted 18 new positions. I think we can't afford that. So it's the additional positions that department heads want, number one. And number two, if that doesn't get us there, eliminate jobs through attrition. We saw the list from Schmiegel, I believe, 120 positions that we have that aren't filled. That could be looked at also. So I'm just throwing that out there, just experience 10 years ago, what we had to do. It's just funny, I was just thinking this. I mean, we've sort of been, our budget has been balanced the last couple of years, and now we're going into deficit. So now we're starting to do the thinking process and the things we've done as a board, a commissioner board, as we did over 10 years ago, kind of going through that again. But that would be one thing, is looking at positions and personnel, because that's a very big cost in county government. So, thank you.
And on the other side of that is if we put a set amount that we won't go below, it's not really, we do put it back on the executive's office and the departments to make that decision. I mean, because the number is the number. However they want to get to it is how they want to get to it. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't bring up Michigan State Extension and talk, as you've brought up many times before. I mean, or things like that to talk about. But it is also, I would say it would be on the executive to stay within, that target number that we look at. Not that we can't do, some of that on our own, but I'm gonna say that would be my choice would be to get a number that's fair, that gives us a budget balance again, and however you want to spend the money, I mean, is not really for us to say it. I mean, to a point. Anybody else? Commissioner Leonetti?
We always talk here on the budget side of things, but there's a little bit of talk we could talk about on the revenue side. You know, do departments know that there's grants out there? I mean, one of the questions I had when we had controlled substance here, you know, no question with the opiate crisis, he even admitted, the department head, that there's tons of grants out there right now. Are these department heads going to, like, if we were going to send them to training or seminars, I think the best training or seminars to send them to would be to seminars to learn how to get grants. I think a lot of these departments could increase their revenue a little bit if they knew where and when and how to get certain grants. And I'm going to give you a department that I see a lot of grants coming in through, because I think she's incredibly daft at knowing how to do it, and that's Candace Miller's department. Public Works, every time I go to a drain board committee meeting, it always seems like we're signing off on approving some grant money. And I think she's, maybe her career in politics has enabled her to know how to do it, but that's an incredibly daft department at getting grants. And I have to assume some of these other department heads would be able to get grants too, if somehow or another they were informed about it. And I will say this last thing, going to SEMCOG told me right to my face that Macomb doesn't seem to take advantage of grants that are out there. So I think we really need to look at a little bit of the revenue side of things too. And maybe if we're going to spend some money on seminars, we send our department heads to learn how to get grants, or even create another department just for getting grants for different departments. I think that's important. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. I'm going to let Jen kind of respond to that. Commissioner Carabelli's brought that up several times about maybe it's time to have a grant department, but anyway, go ahead.
Just from my administrative experience with that being on the other side, grants are great for one-time things, and they're great for pilot projects. The problem is obviously, you know, you can have a 2-year project startup, but then funding goes away, and how do I continue it? So unless I have a long-term vision that builds this, you know, this new thing, it's challenging to actually go after those dollars, because some of them can take years to get. You know, a lot of them, federal grants are notorious for being a real pain to have to comply with. But, you know, so if there are cutting edge or new pilot things to start up, then it's just a matter of, okay, we can go get this $250,000 grant, but board, are you going to give me the $1 million that it's going to cost me after 2 years to keep this going? So that's the challenge with it. You know, you can hire grant writers, you know, to do grants for you. You know, there are some who specialize with federal grants and how you get those. There are grant writers that have relationships with foundations, you know, that you can use, and you know, you can pay them, you know, on a full, you know, contract basis, not a percentage of the grant amount award. That's not, yeah, that's not allowed. But you know, so there are ways that you can do that, and departments could be encouraged, you know, as part of the board priorities, you know, that you adopt, you know, to encourage departments to go out and seek out, you know, I call it third-party funding, you know, outside funding, to enhance their programs and services. So that was just from the.
No, and I'm glad you explained that. I mean, you know, you're absolutely right. It is usually a one-time shot, but, you know, if we can bring up revenue a little bit, it helps.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close new business. Move on to public participation. Madam Clerk, would you like to participate in public participation?
Not today.
Okay, great. Seeing no one else from the public, we're going to, oh, jeez. We're going to close public participation, and I need a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Drolat, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Please vote. All right, meeting adjourned.